It's kind of still tough to talk about, but that's not Franklinville.
What the DeMarco brothers did, they were comfortable. Why were they comfortable?
In my mind, that's as low as you can get. There were kids. There were kids marching up and down the road that day.
Well, you make sure that you get between them and those kids. I mean, they were babies.
So it's now motivating people to say, like, look, no, like, this is not how we're going to have Franklinville be seen.
This is not about a black and a white issue. It's about being on the side of right.
I think we have an uncovering here, not that we're this heinous, hateful community as a whole, but we're a community that's not unlike many in the U.S. right now.
It happened just about a month ago, directly behind me, in a relatively small, relatively quiet town. It only took a few minutes for Franklinville, New Jersey to become international news for all the wrong reasons.
Neither of the DeMarco brothers have spoken out about this, but I can promise you and tell you that the town and the residents in this town have plenty to say.
I want justice to be served.
Those were kids. They were high school kids. They were grade school kids. You know what I mean? Adults. They were people that wanted to make a point and say that, hey, you know, we're a people. We matter.
Lives can't matter till Black Lives Matter.
I want individuals all over to see that this will not be tolerated.
That act of racial hatred is now ricocheting across the web.
They're racist and they're not afraid to speak up about it. They were mocking it. They were mocking the death of a black man by the hands of the police.
I automatically thought about my son and how sad it is that these are the type of people that are living so close to home.
Hundreds of protesters marching through a Gloucester County community today, just days after a viral video made national headlines for all the wrong reasons.
There was no answer at the home of Jim DeMarco, and the mother of the men said Joe wasn't available and defended her sons.
Would they do this?
My sons are good people. They come from a good family.
Would they have done this?
You have to ask them. I have no idea what they would do.
She declined to look at the video and argued if it was her sons, they were in support of the march.
But if they were there in support. Because, you know, we're
not... You sure, ma'am? You sure they were there for support?
Absolutely. People don't want to talk about it. It's bad here because they don't think it's a problem. So if you don't think it's a problem, then you don't talk about it. The only way it's going to get better is to call it what it is. You have to meet the moment when it arrives. So when the DeMarco brothers did what they did, the moment arrived for let's talk about it.
Now this community, like so many others across the country, was forced to look in the mirror. And that's why photojournalist Bill Rohrer and I, we came back to talk to the pastor, the student organizer, the ex-cop and chaplain, the community activist, and several others. Residents with different experiences, because we quickly found out that Franklinville, New Jersey could really be any town USA.
For the most part, it's a quiet town. You drive through here, you won't even know you're in Franklinville. That's how quiet it is, and that's how small it is.
I wanted this for my family, because you don't have to lock your front door and your back door. You know, I mean, it's still that type of town. It's picturesque. There's a lot of lakes, you got bald eagles.
Franklinville is a very connected community. We are very diverse.
I have a great stake in this place. I think it's a great community. I think we have a gigantic amount of support for each other.
Moving forward, I would like people to think of Franklinville as a community that is full of spirit and love and unity, and not this image of hate and racism that has surfaced.
We're known for two things in this town. Our football team, but also, you know, our police force, and not for the right reasons.
If you're black driving through Franklinville, don't have a nice car because you're going to get pulled over. You better do the speed limit. It's home. It's where I raised my kids at, but it's also where I wanted my kids to leave.
So you get these little incidents that spring up in these little towns, and now everybody's shocked. Oh my gosh, I didn't know. You know.
No officer was proud of that moment, just like no officer is proud of any moment with George Floyd. That was absolutely, I don't know any cop that would say, yeah, that was a good thing. It was terrible. Somebody was murdered. You know what I mean? So that incident from the police point of view was stupid.
If we want that not to be our story, that we need to come to the table loudly and say that is not our story.
Coming up, the conversations are happening all over the country, and people may seem pretty far apart, but are we really?
The goal is always to try to bring people together, but one of the biggest challenges to unity is that your individual perception is what determines whether or not you even believe there's a problem.
From this local area in South Jersey, you know about Franklinville.
That is a small percentage of this town, as it is everywhere, realistically.
What happened is not us. Everyone is not racist in this community.
I don't think that the counter-protest represents the entire community of Franklinville. I think that they definitely represent a group of people within Franklinville.
A major challenge of solving racism is an honest discussion about where and if it exists. And that was Darrianne Fennell's goal when the 21-year-old organized the march where the DeMarco brothers, longtime residents, mocked the killing of George Floyd.
Because the community, I would hope, holds Franklinville to such a high standard, because we are full of so much love and we have such a sense of community, I want to be able to hold it to that standard still. Because like I said, racism is everywhere, and it is in Franklinville as well, but we aren't accepting of that.
She's not an angry protester. She doesn't hate her hometown. Quite the contrary, she just wants it to be better by working on its problems.
Where that was the viral video that went crazy all over the internet, I think that it also is now motivating people to say, like, look, no, like, this is not how we're going to have Franklinville be seen.
So to that end, what happened was perhaps painfully necessary.
It's a work in progress. You have to constantly work at it, and I think that that's what a lot of people are finally doing.
Isn't this nice out here?
Beverly Merritt, the longtime resident and activist, and Reverend Beth Caulfield, the fairly new Franklinville pastor, met recently as a result of the tension in the town. Now, they have very different views on what their town represents.
They're going to constantly say, that's not what Franklinville is, what you saw, but that is indeed what Franklinville is. That is indeed.
We can't deny that happened, that those folks live here and they felt comfortable for whatever reason with the acts that they committed. But at the same time, to judge an entire community as being in line with those acts is a problem.
But as different as their general impression is, they've become friendly as they recognize that they can, and like others, they must work together to reach a common goal.
I have a grandson. Like, he should not have to, like, go through stuff simply because of the color of his skin. Like, we are intelligent, we are smart, we are capable of doing anything that our white counterparts. We just want a fair chance.
I think we have an uncovering here, not that we're this heinous, hateful community as a whole, but we're a community that's not unlike many in the U.S. right now that have allowed folks like that to feel comfortable that they could do something like that.
The ongoing issue about the imagery of Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, All Lives Matter has caused an ongoing debate both here and all across the country.
All lives can't matter until Black lives matter. If all lives truly matter, that's everyone on a global scale.
When you hear people saying all lives matter, or especially blue lives matter, it's because, we forget, in 2015, with hands up, don't shoot, and then people are carrying signs saying every pig should be roasted like bacon.
We didn't say blue lives don't matter. We didn't say that. We need them to realize it's a cry for help.
Among the largest wedge issues we've seen over the last month or so has surrounded the imagery and wording displayed across the country that also lives in Franklinville. Black Lives Matter, according to polling, to most is a rallying cry.
And there's so many ways that you can kind of explain it to people why all lives matter isn't really an appropriate response to Black Lives Matter. We're not saying that all lives don't matter.
But why are these same demographics continue to fight for the same equal rights as a Caucasian male or female have, if all lives matter? That's just my opinion.
But to others, it's a divisive statement. Pastor Donnie Davis, a military veteran and former cop who himself participated in at least one of the Franklinville marches, says that equality is just not what many police officers hear when the chanting starts.
When you see all of these signs, when you see Black Lives Matter, is that offensive?
Absolutely. And not because of Black Lives Matter, because when I hear Black Lives Matter, I think of the organization. When I hear Black Lives Matter as a former police officer, that's what I associate that organization with, kill cops.
It's an interesting viewpoint, especially from someone who seems to support many of the things that people are marching for.
Like African Americans absolutely matter. I can support that without supporting a specific hashtag organization.
But in a lot of ways, the battle of slogans or hashtags seems to keep even people interested in progress from really coming together.
I'm not scary. I am 6'1", I'm 200 and some pounds, but I have a college degree, I'm educated, and I have my own business. I am just like you.
The Berries live directly across the street from the Franklin Township Police Station and display a Black Lives Matter sign. They say the message is clear if people are willing to hear it.
Of course, all lives matter. You know what I mean? Like, save the rainforest. No, save all forests. All forests matter. Right. You know, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Save the pandas. All animals matter. Of course, all animals matter, but the pandas are the ones that are at risk right now.
We see it across the country. Highly charged, but honestly, smaller issues of disagreement are the things that stop larger paths to unity. But do we have the desire to get past them?
We need a place where we can actually sit and have those real conversations and not shouting across the table, but recognizing, yes, there have absolutely been mistakes made in the past, 100%, and I don't think anybody denies that. So how do we go from here to here in real tangible ways?
It's time to keep having those tough conversations and just don't let them shy away from the conversation. Make them have that tough conversation. It's going on for too long. Something has to give.
The differences exist, but when we stop yelling and start talking, we often find that many of us aren't that far apart. Next on Our Race Reality, Small Town America. So the challenges are clear. We know about that. But what comes next? How do we heal? We've begun to explore the issues many of us are facing, both here in Franklinville and across the country. Good-hearted people want to move to solutions, and as we've said, that involves difficult decisions, but perhaps more important, the willingness to listen. So that's what we did.
Can we, greater society, and then we, Franklinville, heal from this? And if so, how?
Oh, absolutely.
We're coming to you, to this township, letting you know we want to be heard. We need change here. You know, instead of denying, let's start fixing.
I don't think we're much different than 1968, which is really sad, that all this time has passed since Martin Luther King and we're still talking about the same issues. So I say don't leave it in the politicians' hands. Let the civilians or the communities get together and let us show the politicians how it can be done.
Doesn't matter if you're black, brown, white, yellow, green, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter your religion, your political affiliations. It doesn't matter to me. You are an American citizen just like I am. So we need to all be on the same page and on the same level when it comes to as far as equality and treat each other with respect and dignity.
This definitely has brought a lot more people together. People that I would have never met. I met a woman and she came over, opened up about her story. I opened up about my story and how we just talked that there is no difference between her and I, no matter what race we are.
I mean, it's 2020. I shouldn't have to have a conversation with my son about how to act when he's driving, whether to have his hood on, whether to have his hat on, how to play your music, how to act when you walk in around other people. You know, you have to put a face. You shouldn't have to do that. You shouldn't have to do that.
If we get to know one another and understand our stories and why I think the way I do and what has happened to me, then I can develop empathy and compassion, and you can develop empathy and compassion. And so we approach one another a little differently, and we develop trust.
Now it's time to become more educated, and that's the best way I believe that we're going to work on our healing, by more and more people getting educated and using their voice.
The community has spoken, but several people asked, where are the mayor and police chief and leadership? Well, they agreed to talk to us, and that's next.
Now, several people told us that after initially releasing a statement, officials in the town had been very quiet about the incident. But after a couple of days here, Mayor John Bruno gave me a call and asked us to come back to town and sit down with himself and the chief of police.
It happened. It's an ugly incident. Not proud of it. Wished it never happened here. But it did, and we're going to deal with it.
Both Mayor Bruno and Chief Zimmer spoke candidly about the incident. As longtime residents, they both admitted it was eye-opening.
Was I surprised that something that low and that cowardly could have happened here? Yeah, I was. That's in my mind, that's as low as you can get. There were kids. There were kids marching up and down the road that day. They were young kids, 6-year-old kids, 9-year-old kids, their older brothers and sisters. And they had to witness that? I mean, come on.
There was no need for any of that to occur and for them to go through that.
Neither the mayor or the chief have spoken to the media because they both agreed that discussing the event over and over again was counterproductive, which is why they say that they only agreed to speak with us after action steps were being developed.
We're going to deal with it like we started today. We had some clergy, some pastors, community leaders in, different people from the community, a couple of different people from the community, and we're gonna take this thing on.
No media was allowed inside the first of a planned series of meetings, but it appears that at the very least, the same conversations that we had with members of the community, they continued behind closed doors.
There was a couple things that I heard that I wasn't expecting, but I was glad to hear it. We were glad to hear it. You need to hear it. You're not going to be able to understand it unless you're hearing it directly from the people that were affected by it.
They apparently discussed the divisive views of their town.
There's a problem. Like, I mean, I'm okay with saying that there's probably a racial problem in Franklinville.
Challenges with how the police department is perceived.
Talking from a police point of view, we don't have a lot of bias incidents. We barely get them that are reported. It's the ones that aren't reported because people are either afraid or they're embarrassed or whatever the case may be.
And overall, the impression was that as difficult as the conversations may be, they have begun and they must continue as people are showing a willingness to come to the table.
Do I think we're ever going to cure everyone from racism? I don't think we're ever going to cure everybody. You're always going to have people that have their beliefs. But can we make it better as a community as a whole? I absolutely believe we can do that.
We don't have the answers. We don't. They don't have the answers. But together, we can formulate a plan to get us in the direction we need to be going.
Next up on Our Race Reality, stay with us for our final thoughts.
Listen, there's no easy solution for the division that we're facing as a country, but maybe Franklinville can be held out as an example. They were slapped in the face. They were willing to confront their issues, many willing to listen, and now coming together to heal, lessons that we all could likely learn. I'm Bill Anderson with Bill Rohrer behind the camera, and thank you so much for watching.